G'day guys, Seeney here, and welcome to another episode on the Australian Wealth Channel. And we are back for part two with Belinda, who is a property valuer who is giving us so much fantastic insight into the property market and what to look for. So here we go. So it's no surprise that the market has gone up an insane amount in the last couple of years. I'm very, very thankful that we bought a couple of years ago now, because it's just absolutely insane what's gone on with interest rates dropping and lending standards getting a little bit easier. But there's a real challenge there for first home buyers who haven't bought into the market and seen that kind of growth that we've had the last couple of years. So what is it, do you think, that first home buyers can do to actually get their foot in the door somewhere?
I would say, and I'm not trying to, make it sound any less harder than it is. It depends, where you are in your life when you're buying your first home. Because you could have, your early, mid to early 20s, or you could be a first home buyer in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, at, all different ages. I think if you can, and you don't really have a family, and it's okay, I think try and just get into the market if you can. And when I say just get in, if it means you have to just buy a unit to get in, or a townhouse or a villa, because I think more so this time, because of COVID and everyone working from home, everybody wants a house. Mm-hmm. And that has caused house prices and unit prices to do this, where they were always kind of just, trying to explain that house prices have increased 20, 30% and units have only, say, increased 7 to 10%. And that is because the drive and the demand for houses has outperformed units. But I always believe now, listen to me or not listen to me, what do I know? But I always think it's better to perhaps buy in an area that you want. Not necessarily, I'm saying buy in Bondi because everyone's living in Bondi, but live in the area that you are close to family and friends, and just that lifestyle that you want. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in the thick of it, but at least close enough to it that it's all about lifestyle. I think if you're compromising your lifestyle, your family, your friends, just to be, in an area that you really don't want to be, just to be in a house, it can sometimes be a little bit, tiresome, or you just get over it. I think live where you want to live and afford what you can to get in, because then you can always use the equity in that to then, if the unit has increased a little bit, use that then to upgrade maybe to a townhouse, then eventually to a house, or just go straight into the house. If you can't, really look into, educate yourself, or even get a professional to help you rent vest. I think you've spoken about it before. I know, it's a buzzword. I've spoken about it, where, again, live where you want to live, rent there, and then put your money in an area that you think has good growth that you can afford, be it, Brisbane's so hot right now. Adelaide is going, bonkers. Maybe, there's other areas in Sydney and Melbourne that are performing. You don't want to necessarily live there, but they are doing well. Put your money there, let that grow a little bit, pull it out, and then buy a house where you want or close to where you want. But I think the key is just get in. And even if it means just buying a unit, there's units and then there's units. There's brand new units that I hate, and I say stay away, do not buy them. Mm-hmm. But if it's in a really good established area, close to transport, and the key is it has to need a little bit of renovation, so then you can renovate it to add that equity to increase. And I think then you can borrow the equity in that, use it to buy another property, sell it, whatever. And if you're living in it, you don't pay capital gains tax. So, just little steps at a time rather than going straight to the end goal, and having your, wanting to start off where your parents left off. That's where I think a lot of people make that mistake.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially the rent vesting one. And my uncle used to be one of the high-up managers at the Commonwealth Bank. And whenever he would talk about property, especially with younger folks, he'd say, you just have to start somewhere. You might not be able to buy that $3 or $4 million house in Bondi, but, if you start investing, there's a lot of great growth regionally, especially the last couple of years that we've seen in places like Newcastle and even in Brisbane, where we bought our investment property. We've seen some great growth there. So people might look at those Sydney prices and go, oh, how am I ever going to do this? Well, I think there's just a multitude of other opportunities that are out there that people can take advantage of that are much more affordable.
Yeah, you're a Sydney boy, aren't you?
Yeah, that's me down in Campbelltown.
Born and bred. But, you talk about Newcastle. I've been shocked at the prices in Wollongong, for instance, and that whole gap between, the Wollongong, that really beautiful scenic drive through Thirroul and, Woonona, all the way up to Sydney.
Yep.
Those prices have gone because they're the fringe to the main cities. So, if you bought there last couple of years, you're laughing. Nobody ever wanted to live there. And it was like, no one wants to live in Wollongong and Newcastle because they're like the poor cousin to the city.
Yep.
They've upgraded to stepbrother. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's been quite amazing to watch the growth of Wollongong because I remember growing up in Appin, just down the road from Wollongong, and it really was just kind of like this little regional centre, but now it's just exploded and become a huge city at this point. And I guess a lot of people wanted to escape out of Sydney and get themselves somewhere that was coastal. And I guess Wollongong seems to be the most obvious place to do it.
Yeah, it's the beach too. I think a lot of people going back to that lifestyle, you see, some people think, well, do I move out, Penrith, Windsor for the same amount of travelling into the city as I would in, say, Wollongong? At least out in Wollongong, I've got the beach. So some people took the whole family out of Sydney and moved down there and they've never looked back.
Yeah, and much nicer climate too. It gets really hot out that way, out near Penrith and Windsor too. So if you can get something a little bit more equitable and balanced, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, so I think instead of pushing Sydney out, west, it's been pushed to the sides. That southwest corridor has absolutely exploded with those new house and land packages, and it'll only keep growing. It'll only keep growing.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not running out of people. That's or investors. That's for sure.
Or land.
Oh yeah. Big time. So what are some of the catalysts that you see for an area to go up in value? What should people be looking for if they're looking to invest in a particular area?
It's got a lot to do with, up and coming infrastructure is, regional areas. You've got to be a little bit careful too, because there's regional and there's regional. Is there new hospitals or universities being built? Is the government spending money to grow that region? Are you hearing about big businesses opening up, a Bathurst branch, or is there, Energy Australia's opening, a plant out in Dubbo, therefore bringing in, 25,000 employees or something of that nature? And be careful with cyclical climate infrastructure. Like, what I mean by that is, I'm trying to find the right words here. It's something like mining, for instance. When you go in, you mine, the mine's done, you move out, you ship out, you're done. So these are more, long-term infrastructures that people will want to stick around for. Hospitals bring people, universities. Usually if there's a hospital, there's a university, because the medical research team want to be close to the university, so they kind of go hand in hand. Schools, universities, I said that. So roads, railway, airports, keep your ear to the ground. We've got the Western Sydney Airport. I think that's just on the cusp of really, that realisation that, hang on a minute, this is going to be something big. Once that starts getting built and people need to travel, I live near the airport in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And, everyone around here, somebody somehow works baggage, a security, a flight attendant. It brings people want to be close to work. So I think when you are finding the infrastructures built in the regional area, that brings people, that brings jobs, that brings economy, that brings money, that brings rent, and that brings property values. So if there's people that need to live somewhere, and if they need to live somewhere, they'll either buy or rent. So if they're going to rent, then you can buy the house to supply the rent. So and it's not such a selfish. A lot of people say, investors are causing the market to go up. This cycle, we haven't had hardly, it's been all owner-occupied driven. We haven't had international money. We haven't had investor money. It's all been owner-occupied money. But the investors, as much as people hate on investors, it's the investors that bring the property for people to live, for renters to live. You can't just rely on the government to be building. And if they do, they'll only be building unit blocks or, high-density properties. It's investors that supply that rental market. It could be a temporary person just looking in between homes to rent, and it's the investor that provides that property. So it's not all bad. I mean, they say it takes all types to make the world go round. Mm-hmm. Same with property market. So
absolutely, we have a good commie bashing policy on this channel. But I think exactly what you've said is fantastic. I looked at a lot of the data of this rise because I've seen a lot of the same thing of people saying, it's all these investors. Well, 2/3 of the market is owner occupiers. And from people that are foreign investors, I think that number's like 3 or 4% of all the purchases that have happened recently. So that's not much. Like, obviously, most of the action is coming from people in Australia.
Yeah. And when this is a bit cheeky of me to say, a lot of people, when the data comes out that they're investors, what I've found is some people, I'm not saying brokers are dodgy, but sometimes you get more money from the bank if you say that you're buying an investment property. Because you're getting the rent to help service the loan as well. So when you fill out that form, you say, it's an investment property or it's a first homeowner grant, and you say you're living in it, but then it turns into an investment property later very quickly. Or the opposite happens where you say, it's for an investment purpose, get your loan approved, stick a tenant in there for a couple months, or have the existing tenant stay and then move them out, and then you move in, and then it becomes an owner-occupied property. Some people just say, I'm going to still live with mum and dad until I get, a little bit more money saved, and I'll just whack a tenant in there. But a lot of those investors aren't necessarily long-term investors. They've done it to either squeeze a little bit more money out of the bank, or just as a temporary thing until they've saved enough money for them to then go in. So we got to do what you got to do to get in sometimes, but sometimes that data is a bit skewed.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, basically any way you can.
Done it. Let's,
Yeah, we can't give away too much here. So what are you expecting from the property market going forward? Because it kind of feels like we're going through a period of uncertainty here. Where, the market's gone up so much, and now there's a lot of people wondering, is this going to keep going? Are we going to, have this huge crash like the banks predicted before COVID? What do you expect going forward?
When it comes to property, the first thing I always say is really, really, really expect the unexpected. As we spoke earlier, it can flip so quickly. And as I said earlier as well, really just if you're in the market actively, like I'm talking, you wanting to buy any moment, you wanting to sell any moment, or you wanting to sell relatively soon, just keep watching those numbers, those stock levels. Watch the last 3 weeks in a row, we've seen the auction results just ever so slightly be dropping down. One of two things. Is that just a natural progression because slightly more stocks coming on the market and we are seeing a natural slowing of the market? Is it just purely got to do with everyone just coming out of lockdown and, they want to buy, just a bit's going on at the moment, and we're leading into that Christmas break? I don't know just yet what's happening. Next year, they're saying that prices will just increase ever so slightly, and then we're going to see a 10, 20% drop back in 2023. I think if we see a market correction of 10%, that's nothing to be scared of. And a lot of people are like, 10%. Mm-hmm. When you have increased so quickly of, say, 30%, coming back 10%, you've still made a hell of a lot of money. Is, if you had a property that's gone up 300,000 and it's only come back 110 or 120, let's say, you've still made 180 from where you started. So if it comes back, it's only natural to have a correction. Long term, hold on, it will continue to go up. But you will only really see, I can't say, I speculate about February, March. just watch, really keep your finger on the pulse, watch those, and watch the auction results, and watch the type of properties that are passing in. If they are that real top end property, that means that the fight to get those really, really good properties, people like, I just don't see me spending $4 million on that, probably 3.8, 3.9, but the owners are still stuck on the old prices. They're the difficult ones because they're still thinking June, July 2021, but they're not meeting the market. They're expecting the market to meet them, and that's a really difficult place to be if you're selling, because you've got that FOMO, like, damn it, I missed out on that market, but I don't care. I'm gonna hold out for that one magic buyer.
I'm gonna get it anyway.
Get it anyway. I'm not selling unless I get that 4.2. Well, mate, if no one's paying 4.2, your property's not worth that. So have a look at the type of properties that are passing in and the type of properties that are selling, and see what and by talking to agents, they might say, oh, we're hoping to sell at, 1.1, and you see it actually sold for $1,070,000. That means that maybe the owners have committed elsewhere and they just need to get it gone. And they're prepared to take, $30,000. That is what it is. There's that saying, one in the hand is worth two in the bush. So you got the money, just take it. So having a really good look at why things are selling, how they're selling, what's passing in, auction results, are more properties entering the market. That will give you an idea of the way that the property's going. The media really do. They'll hear a story and they'll just jump on it and blow it up and completely out of context. And you've read it and you're like, I did my research and I read this article on Domain and it said that the property prices are this, so I'm not going to bid at auction. So then you stop bidding, and then the guy next to you is like, well, if he's not bidding, then I'm not going to bid. And then the guy behind you going, well, if those two aren't bidding, then I'm not going to bid. So everyone sits there with their arms crossed and you ask them, well, why aren't you bidding? Well, because he's not bidding, not because they have a valid reason themselves. And this is also the truth when it comes the opposite. Like, well, if he's bidding, I'm going to bid. Well, then if they're both bidding, then I'm. So it's like that, a little bit of like a sheep mentality in the property market, because you really don't want to miss out, because Sydney, Melbourne, they states in Sydney, they just explode, and you just don't want to be at the top of the explosion. You kind of want to get in early. But then at the same time, you don't want to be right at the top and then it bursts and then you've come back down. So it is very much just following the market. But I think there's still a bit of steam in there. I think the last time we came back, Jay, I'll just tell you real quick. I remember we had that big Royal Commission, and I've explained it like this. I've said, I feel like everybody was on the dance floor, having fun, everyone was dancing, and then they just literally burst open I don't know if you've ever been to an under 18s when they turn the lights on at like 12 o'clock, and then you look at the person you're dancing with and you're like, oh, gee, you look a lot different with the lights on. I think they did that with the market. I think they just turned the lights on and everyone just went, oh, okay, well, I wasn't really ready to finish dancing, but I'll stand on the sidelines and just wait for the DJ to figure out what's going on with the lighting. Put the lighting down and the DJ went back. Everyone just jumped back into the market, with a vengeance. I'm hoping, and I think this time round it organically will just come back. It won't feel so forced because of things like a Royal Commission that really just put it was almost like an artificial halt on the market. Just went in and mucked around with a whole bunch of stuff with lending and restrictions, and people were like, oh, damn it, I wasn't ready to stop, but I was forced. This time round, I think if it's an organic slowing down of the market, it's a little bit more accepted and people have a bit of a chance to catch their breath. And then if it comes back up again years down the track, as long as it's just not forced by too much government,
interference, for sure. I agree.
The whole thing about a dance party out of the property market, but I hope where I was coming from.
Well, I think this is why people really love your content, because it's so relatable. It's such a good analogy.
Yeah, that's how I just felt it. I was like, we were still dancing. Everyone's having fun. Buying property, the market was hot, and then all of a sudden the Royal Commission, bang, lights on, everyone's out. I'm like,
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think there's still going to be a little bit of steam in the market. I'm continuing to buy for the long term because there's still decent rental yields, not so much in Sydney, but elsewhere. So I think maybe not Sydney, Melbourne, but I think a lot of other places will still continue to see a little bit more steam in the market.
Yeah, I think if you're an investor, you've just got to ask yourself one of two things. Why are you investing? Are you investing for that long-term capital growth? You don't really care too much about the rent. Maybe you're a high net worth earner. You've got a great job, you're earning good money, so the rent's not really that important to you. You're more interested in long-term growth.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are like, I want that financial freedom. I don't want to work because I want the rent to cover the mortgage and give me a little bit extra, in the long run. I'm more interested, not so much in capital growth, but in a great rental return. And if you answer these two questions, whichever suits you, it really, really, really then determines the type of property you buy, because then you don't go in the regions where your rental yield is really great. You stay in the big capital cities and you wait for that long-term, really aggressive capital growth. So it just really depends what type of investor. There's no right or wrong. That's the beauty about property. It's your individual, we all love that financial freedom, but hell, there's some people that just absolutely love working and they've got really high paying jobs and they're like, I'm not giving that up for nothing. I don't care if I'm a gazillionaire, so they just want to grow their wealth. And there's other people like, I want to travel and, financial freedom. I don't want to work past 40. I just want to have a couple investment properties to keep paying the rent. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what makes property such a wonderful vehicle for that. You can tailor it to what you're after. So as we know, the market's not one big market. We have pockets where some places will go down, some will go up. What are some of the suburbs that you think are going forward are going to perform the best?
Okay. I had to think about this question because it's a great question. I'll answer in Sydney because I know Sydney. So if you had just Google the suburbs and get a map and then you'll see what I mean. I think the greatest growth I think we had this time round was like the Northern Beaches. They just went absolutely gangbusters in terms of percentage and growth. Like average house price 1.4 is now 2.6, just huge amount of money in the Northern Beaches. And I think it goes back to, again, what I said about that lifestyle and that beachside. People were like, I just want that lifestyle. I just want to be able to wake up and go for a walk, go for a surf, catch up with my friends, have a cafe. So I think a lot of people want that lifestyle, and it's caused those property prices to go up. I think if you're looking if you can't afford those, looking at the B and C suburbs of those. And what I mean by that is, let's say, let's talk about the East, because I know the East pretty well. Mm-hmm. You can't quite afford Bondi, but then there was always Randwick, and then you couldn't afford Randwick, just outside of there. So then you went to you Coogee, but then you had Maroubra, then you had Malabar, then you had, all the way down to, say, La Perouse. Now, I always see the market this way. Say Bondi is the pinnacle of your beachside suburbs, and Bondi prices have gone to, say, $6 million for a house. Next down, say you've got your Tamarama, and they're sitting at 4.5, 5. I think those buyers will eventually come up to this price level, and then they will come up, because the suburb that's always the one below the one that you want will if Coogee can get that $6 million, that $4 million property, and Maroubra is sitting at 5. Then that can come up to 5. That causes that to come up, which then that second suburb. So it's always getting into those B and C suburbs under the ones that you really want to get in, because they will eventually come up to where that suburb is and causing that to come up. People, I'm seeing, and I don't want to say it like, in a way that sounds like a snob or anything, but I feel like Sydney, and it's nothing we can do, or, it is fact. Sometimes I think the city might be a city of two tails, mm-hmm. in terms of get that high net worth individuals that these are your CEOs. These are money that like you and I can't imagine, just, buy that $8 million house cash.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Ferrari drivers, no finance, they travel first class. You and I are like, can I use my flyby points? No, I don't care. Like, it's that next level wealth. And, people are in that category. And I think they don't get really affected by interest rates because, hey, who cares? I'm earning, $1 million a year. I find those suburbs will always go up, and then those other suburbs will have to keep up with them. And it means that those maybe lower net worth individuals, those suburbs won't just grow as hard. So you'll have the city that's being split. And where it splits, I don't quite know. You talk about your Parramatta that's down the middle, but, it may be further out west. It may be further east. I don't know where that is, but I feel like the more these net worth individuals are earning and their wealth is growing, I think the disparity between the two, like a house in Bondi, say $8 million on a 400 square metre block. Copy and paste that out in Blacktown. I'm not saying it's a comparable, but just, it's the same city, it's the same everything, just the values will continue to they won't grow at the same rate.
Yep.
They'll just pull apart harder and faster,
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah.
I guess you just got to run your own race and, I guess get close to where you want to seems to be the ticket.
I think that's it. It is getting close to where you want to go. And I think buying as much as what you can afford to is going in as hard as you can. If you want that suburb and you want that house, go in as hard as you can afford without overstretching yourself. And some people are okay with the sacrifice. Others, again, I don't want to be tied up to a mortgage. I want to travel, blah, blah, blah. I want a nice car. I want a holiday, private school for my kids. That's fine. If you're prepared to sacrifice all that and live where you want to live in the house that you want to live in, then that's okay too. But know what you're prepared to sacrifice and then go in as hard as you can at that price point.
Fantastic. All right, I got one more question for you to wrap up. So, what is the most expensive property that you've ever had to value?
Oh, okay. I have valued back then, it's probably worth maybe close to 20 million now. I've valued quite a few penthouses in the CBD that have gone crazy now. I valued an apartment. I never forget. It was in Bondi. And I forget the name of the building. It wasn't Icebergs and it wasn't North Bondi. They bought the penthouse and the apartment underneath, and they cut a massive hole in the middle and they put a big staircase.
Wow. I
remember at the time, this was going back 10, 15 years ago, I put 15 million on it then. Boston said, she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's worth at least 20. And I was like, oh. And it was hard because there was no comparable sales evidence. When I think for 15, you could buy literally a cliff top mansion in Bondi for that money. And I thought, I'd rather be living in that than the apartment. But probably a penthouse, surprisingly or not, because penthouse units get sometimes more than actual houses that you'd think would be worth more, but they're not. So, and a couple in Cronulla too, believe it or not. I've done a few that have been, pretty impressive properties. Coastal, anything coastal and anything with water views, long term.
To the moon. Absolutely. Yes. I want to be able to pick up one of those apartments in the Crown Towers one day. We stayed there a couple of weeks ago and they are just incredible. So I better get back to work. So thank you so much for coming on the channel. I think there's a really a lot of value there that people can take away so they can be a little bit more educated about property. So I guess if you had any piece of advice to wrap up, what do you think you would give to folks that were looking to get into the market?
Just really, really know your stuff. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for professional opinions as well. So get yourself a really, really, really good conveyancer read through your report and understand the contract and make sure that there's no hidden nasties in there. If you want to buy a house to redevelop, make sure there's nothing in there that's stopping you from putting the house where you want to put the house in the pool where you want to put it. Get a really good broker, and not just a broker that's just like, yeah, how much you want to borrow, what's the rate. One that actually knows what they're talking about and will kind of fight for you to get that best rate. And also get yourself a really good accountant, because I think understanding any, especially if you're an investor, do you want to maybe put your property in a trust? Do you want to protect it? Is it something you want to put in your wife's name because you own a business in your name? Having an accountant that knows all these tax legislation, tax breaks is really important. Also, is it going to affect your capital gain, your income? Are you going to pay, tax on it? You're going to get money back. They work out things that you just got no idea, and finding yourself a really, really good accountant can sometimes, spend the money to get the correct advice. And yeah, watch your YouTube channel, your Instagram. Myself, people, there's so many people out there just giving, free advice and free stuff that you can learn off. But if you want to get specific to yourself, then you got to pay the money to get a professional to help you along your journey.
Absolutely. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to check out your content?
You know what? Just send me a message on my Instagram. Like you, I try to reply to everybody as much as I can. I can't give you personal advice as much as I'd love to, which my Instagram is at the Valuer's House, so original, and then my TikTok is just the Valuer, so again, super original. But I share a whole bunch of sometimes worthwhile stuff, sometimes a bit just a bit silly, but I just like to mix it up.
Fantastic. We'll have those links in the description. Belinda, thank you so much, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much.